welcome to a very, very critical offseason for the Indiana Pacers. I'm Kevin Bowen, back on another edition of Kevin's Corner, a Pacers edition of Kevin's Corner. Joey, it has been a while. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room. The Colts do seem to draw a bit more interest from the followers of Kevin's Corner. And so we've really, since we started Kevin's Corner a couple of years ago now, we said that we'd come at you with Colts pretty much every week. And then when it warranted, we'd come at you with a Pacers podcast. And I think right now, it's time to dive back into that.
Right. If there's ever been a time, it's now.
Yeah.
Following the draft, heading into free agency.
Exactly.
Let's do it.
When you draft a guy named Goga, you got to come back with a little Pacers podcast. So we'll touch on Goga. We'll touch on TJ Warren. Get into kind of Kevin Pritchard's thoughts before free agency starts. I think it's Sunday. I think they changed it to June 30th. Yeah, June 30th, a little bit earlier instead of that awful July 1 at midnight time slot. And then a good amount of Twitter questions on today's podcast as well. So we do appreciate you guys sending in those.
All right, let's start it off, though, Kevin. Before the draft, a couple hours before the draft last Thursday, Woj bomb that the Pacers are traded for TJ Warren from Phoenix.
Yeah, an early Woj bomb. Like you said, TJ Warren comes over from Phoenix, where he's been the previous 5 years. A very unique game in that he was a double-figure scorer really throughout his NBA career, despite not being able to throw the ball into the ocean until last year. He really found a three-point shot last year. Shot over, I want to say it was like 29% from three his first 4 years in the league, and then boom, last year he shoots 42% from behind the arc. And if you look at his value, you know, only 10 or 11 million he's due. And the Pacers also got the 32nd pick, which then they turned into 3 picks, future second rounders with Miami. I mean, I thought this was a really, really smart trade. And I thought it was something that Kevin Pritchard hinted at a lot during the offseason leading into the draft of like, hey, look, we've got all this cap space. We are going to absorb contracts. And you're absorbing a contract with Warren, but he's also a guy that I think could potentially be in the starting lineup. I probably tend to think he'll be your backup at the 3 or the 4, maybe the 4, especially if you re-sign Bogdanovich. But he can start at the 3 or the 4. There's some pros and there's some cons with Warren. The pros is what I went back to saying earlier. He's a very unique player in that before he found that three-point shot, it's a guy that averaged, 16, 17, 18 a game with a really varied skill set at the forward position. You kind of throw him the ball 15, 18 feet away from the basket, and he could face up, he could drive, he could finish a bit awkwardly, kind of an old man's game to his game. This guy was an ACC Player of the Year at NC State, and again, didn't really have any sort of jump shot in college, but he hit 42% from behind the arc and shot about 4 attempts per game. So that will be the big question with him is, can he continue to shoot the basketball at a high level? Because he does not pass, and he's not a very good rebounder for 6'8". Certainly not the defensive player that you have with a guy like Thad Young. And even when you go a step further, he's not as durable as Thad Young. So those are the cons, and those are the issues. I think I want to say he's never played. He's missed at least 15 games, Joey, in every single one of his NBA seasons. That's a bit of a red flag. But again, you didn't really give up much. You aren't going to be able to attract and solve every need in free agency. I think you had to do something else in the trade market, and that's what looks like TJ Warren is going to do. So again, I think he could potentially start at the 3 or the 4. If you strike out in free agency at the 2 guard and Victor Oladipo misses, a couple months into the season, something we'll get into a little bit later in the podcast, is it Bogdanovich at the 2, Warren at the 3, Sabonis at the 4, and Turner at the 5? It's a huge lineup.
Right, yeah.
That's big. But I do think what Warren gives you is a forward that you can throw the ball to in the half-court offense. You're probably not going to see the ball again, but he can score. And that's something that I think Thaddeus Young just struggled with. And we hear from the Pacers more of an offensive-minded approach to this offseason. Warren is a very offensive-minded player. And I liked his game at North Carolina State. And like I said, if he's found this three-point jumper, this is a guy that I think can be, a key offensive piece for a team that is, missing some scoring punch and lacked some scoring punch last year.
I feel like every year it comes to draft time with the Pacers, and there's a bunch of high expectations, and we could get this guy, we could get that guy, and then it ends up with someone like Goga Patatse. Not that I know anything about him, but it seems that there's just kind of a to the pick. What do you think?
Yes, I would say a is a very good way to put it. If I'm Kevin Pritchard, I probably would not have checked my Twitter mentions on Thursday night. I think we have to divide this pick into two different areas, Joey. Let's start with the player and Goga, and then let's move on to the fit. Goga, I actually think there's something there. And again, like you said, Joey, I'm basing this off of
EuroLeague highlights.
Right, and as we sit here on Monday, my wife had a bachelorette party on Saturday after doing yard work. I had a lot of time to myself. I probably watched an hour worth of Goga highlights. Don't judge me. But I think there is something there. I see skill. I see the use of a left hand on occasion. I really like his form with how he shoots the basketball. Shot 40, I think it was 41%. When you combine all of his leagues that he was in last year, Adriatic League, and like Joey said, the Euro League. And let's not lose sight of the Euro League, because I think so many times, which I was so pissed this year during the draft, they didn't have my boy Fran
Fraschilla.
Fran breaking down international prospects. Sometimes, whatever, international guy gets drafted 18th overall, and here comes Fran breaking down grainy film in Carmel High School's upper gym, and the guy's averaged like 5 points and 2 rebounds a game, and Fran's like, yeah, he's 2 years away from being 2 years away. And like,
never see that pick ever.
Yeah,
again.
Everyone's like, well, there's a stash that, he'll go play in Croatia for the next 10 years. Goga is not that. He averaged 12 and 6 in the Euro League at the age of 19, playing 24 minutes a game. Kevin Pritchard is pretty adamant that when you break down the analytics, and again, I can't say that I've broken down the analytics from Euro League players, his numbers are comparable to Luka Doncic. And I know that's extremely high praise, but I guess what I'm getting at is this. Goga is ready to play in the NBA. Is he ready to be an 82-game starter and average double figures? Maybe not that, but he's not a stash. He will be in your rotation this season. It was wild, though, that Nate McMillan had never watched film of Goga until they drafted him.
Saw that. Didn't like that. I don't know if that's a normal thing in the NBA or what.
Like, I get it to a degree in the sense of, like, if you looked at mock drafts coming into Thursday night, Goga was probably in that 8 to 12 range. But you know what? It's an international player. It doesn't take a whole lot for a guy to fall. And once Cam Johnson went 11, I think, to Phoenix, somewhere around there, that, I think, threw a bit of a domino into how the draft unfolded from there. And with the Euro League, that is a league that if you talk to NBA people, it is certainly better than the G League, and some NBA people feel like it's as good as just about any conference in college basketball. So this is a guy that has played against men. And I think I maybe said it, well, I definitely didn't say it on Kevin's Corner because we haven't had a podcast for a while, but I think I've said it on our airwaves. So many people ask me, okay, what's the route at 18? Where do you go there? And I thought to myself, why not the international route? You've struck out on college players. You know the ceiling on college players. The international route, I think, offers a bit of a higher ceiling. So a lot of people thought this was the best international player in the draft. A lot of people thought this was the best center in the draft. So I do think there is something there with Goga. Protected the rim at a nice level in the Euro League. Needs to work on his passing, his perimeter defense when switched into pick and rolls. obviously could probably fill out that frame just a little bit. I think he's listed at 6'11", 245. Doesn't maybe look 245 to me, but that is the pick as a player, Joey. Him as a fit, that's your what the hell moment. That's like, wait, what? A center? And you're not trading Sabonis or Turner? Because, like, think about if you went into Thursday night and you traded Turner for the 4th pick. That was kind of a rumor. The Pelicans trade the 4th pick. Okay, let's say Turner goes to the Pelicans, and you take DeAndre Hunter, who I think Atlanta ended up trading up and taking it for. So your starting lineup next year, once Victor gets healthy, could have been Oladipo, Bogdanovich, Hunter. I guess you go a little bit smaller. And then Sabonis at the 5. Your point guard. Now, if you trade Turner, that opens up a little bit more cap space. You go out and you give D'Angelo Russell the max. So now your starting lineup is Russell, Oladipo, Bogdanovich, Hunter, Sabonis. Your bench, Goga, McDermott, Holiday. You probably have money for another free agent or 2, and then wherever you want to throw in, Alize Johnson and Edmund Sumner and hell, TJ Leaf and some of those guys. That's a decent little 7-8 man core that you have there, especially young, when you look at a guy like Hunter, if you think he can turn into an all-star caliber player. That, I think, would have alleviated some of this head-scratching that we have right now, like, where are you going to play these 3 bigs?
Mm-hmm.
Where? And as we sit here today on Monday morning, I think the Pacers are steadfast in believing these 3 guys can play together. Sabonis at the 4, Turner at the 5. I think that means goodbye Thad Young, and then Goga is your first big off the bench. I don't agree with it.
So they're really going to try this Sabonis-Turner thing. Right?
I think they're going to force it, man. They are going to force it, which differs a lot from what you heard at the end of the season when it was need to play with more pace, need to shoot more threes.
Right.
This doesn't achieve that. And so that is the big head scratcher for me, Joey. If I'm running the operation, without a doubt, I'm trading Turner or Sabonis. And I think both of them bring something to your basketball team, but it's just too much for me. It's too big. And
it does kind of seem, to your point, like you said, that the NBA is going one direction and the Pacers seem to continuously go the other.
Yes, and I'm glad that you brought that up. This was a Kevin Pritchard quote, and shout out to Richard. I was on with Big Joe and Jeff this morning. Richard DM'd me this and wanted me to make sure that I saw this video of Pritchard on the Pacers website, and it made me think of this quote that Pritchard had with Dan Dockich on Friday. This is a question more so about Ricky Rubio, who we'll get into a little bit later. But listen to this Pritchard quote. To me, I'm not afraid to stick with what I was taught by Roy Williams, Larry Brown, and Bob Knight. I think some of those principles sway, but I think the pendulum always swings back. If it does, then maybe the traditional point guard does come back. Maybe we value that again. Maybe we value the John Stocktons. I like when the point guard controls a game, takes care of his teammates first, and he's a pass-first guy. I like that basketball. So I'm not opposed to going the contrarian that maybe a shot blocker is okay for us, Turner, and maybe a traditional point guard, Rubio, is okay for us.
Is this just being stubborn, or
Stubborn, I think, is a fair comment to make. It's a bit harsh in a way, but the Pacers, I think, look at it as we're going to be the contrarian. In today's NBA, guards, wings, shooting, pace, all of that is the craze. They don't want to go that route.
Is that because they have a feeling that they're not in the run for players like D'Angelo Russell and Kemba Walker?
I think that's fair. Yeah. I don't know if they feel like they're capable of building a team like that. And he went on to be like, well, you can't emulate the Warriors. And to a degree, I get where Kevin Pritchard's coming from, because in this market, free agency just doesn't lend to those answers. But my devil's advocate says this. You have tradable assets in Turner and Sabonis. Maybe it's not Turner for the 4th overall pick. What about Sabonis to Boston? Boston needs bigs. Seems like Horford's gone. They traded Aaron Baines. What if you got Gordon Hayward in return? You would probably need to give up more, obviously, than just Domas. But, something along those lines. I'm not sold on it, Joey. I'm just not. I think you're too big. They've maybe backed themselves into the corner to where this is where they have to go. But
well, especially with what they said at the beginning. I mean, at the end of the season when they had that press conference about
playing with pace.
It's rinse and repeat of every year. They say, "Hey, we want to shoot more threes. We want to play more pace. Let's add some 7-footers."
Right. Yeah, take steps to actually backing up those words you said.
Right
at the NBA season. So before we get on to Kevin Pritchard's comments, more of those, Joey. Just one last thing on Goga. We obviously do this all the time. Whenever it's a white player, we compare them to white players. Whenever it's black players, we compare them to black players. So let's compare, Goga to Euros. Kevin Pritchard said Nikola Vucevic, the Orlando big guy, with Goga playing a little bit more above the rim. If you can get Vucevic, who I think had an all-star season this past year, this is without a doubt a win. Vucevic is a guy that I think has averaged like 20 and 10. Yes, for a bad basketball team, but whatever. He averages 17 and 8 here in Indiana for a decade. That is a win with the 18th overall pick. So I don't think it's Jokic, certainly not there in Denver with what he can do in passing the basketball, but can he be Enes Kanter? Can he be Nurkic in Portland, Vucevic in Orlando? If he can achieve that, you've found a nice player. But to me, we will not give this 2019 draft the proper grade, I think, unless you're able to trade Sabonis or Turner.
Let's move on to Kevin Pritchard's other updates that he had after the draft. And he talked about a whole wide variety of things, but you can't really go anywhere without starting with the update on Victor Oladipo. Yeah,
I thought this is the newsiest item of the night, Joey, in that we heard Adrian Wojnarowski say a couple days before the draft he threw out December and January for Victor's return. And Kevin Pritchard reiterated that. So if Victor Oladipo misses into January, Joey, that's nearly half of the NBA season. Big Joe asked me today, if Victor misses half the season, this season's a wash. Wash is a harsh word, but I don't totally disagree with it. It's because to me, it's like, all right, right now I'd probably put the Pacers, if Victor misses half the season, 6 seed, 7, right around
right
there.
Back where they were.
And you aren't going to beat, Philly or Boston or Milwaukee or whoever is going to be in those top 4 seeds in a 7-game series. So that's the reality of the situation, Joey. He could miss that much time. And also what that then means on your offseason priority list, you got to go out and find a starting 2.
Yeah.
And I know that he's mentioned Bogey could start at the 2. I mean, you go Bogey at the 2, TJ Warren at the 3, Domas and Turner. That's a big old lineup.
Yep.
Big. So I think adding a starting 2 guard or, a better Wes Matthews to the offseason checklist is an item that is there for Kevin Pritchard here in the next week.
Did you expect him to be out that long?
They're all acting like he's ahead of schedule. I don't know. I was always skeptical on Victor, like everyone being like, oh, Victor will be back. Victor is going to be an all-star again in the NBA. I'm like, guys, this is a serious injury.
Yeah.
And I've said it before. I definitely have said it before on our airwaves. And if I haven't said it on this podcast, I'll say it here. Victor Oladipo has to be an explosive athlete to be an all-NBA type player. That is his number one trait in his game. He is a small shooting guard by height. He is a below-average three-point shooter when you think of kind of shooting guards in this league. And his shot has been streaky in the NBA.
Yeah.
So he has got to have the explosive, I can finish at the rim at an elite level sort of attribute to his game. And if his knee does not allow him to do that, the Pacers will not have the all-NBA type of player we saw a couple years ago. So December, January seems a little bit later than maybe I would have thought, but I always just kind of almost called this coming season a redshirt year for him. almost. But, maybe they're going to have a dilemma halfway through the year. If you don't have a great first half of the season, how much do you play Victor? Is it one of those things? I do think it's key to play him this coming season because I think even Paul George barely seeing the court, when he came back from the broken leg, I think that just helped him mentally. I think there's a mental aspect to it all. So starting 2-guard, man, it's on the offseason priority list.
You said he mentioned that Bogey could be that 2 spot, and they really want to bring Bogey back. What do you think is going to happen there?
I think, Joey, there's a hard line for Bogey. Kevin Pritchard said that at their exit meeting talk, they felt like if it was close, he'd come back. And Bogey expressed that to them. As long as you're close with everyone else, I'm going to come back. But I think he's going to have a great market, really good market. I think the Pacers definitely want to bring him back. But as you make the shooting motion in studio, he does the trade everybody wants, And, is it L.A.? Is it the Spurs? Who is it?
I was going to ask. I saw those reports about the sign-and-trade possibilities. The Spurs are really interested in him.
Right.
Are we hearing anything there? Would that make sense?
Yeah, that would seem to be a great fit for him. And, sure, if you're the Pacers, you'd love to get some sort of return on him if you're able to do a sign-and-trade. That, to me, seemed it was more pre-draft chatter. I don't know how much of that is post-draft chatter. So I think the Pacers are going to really, really try to bring him back. But, man, if that market gets up there, you only have north of $30 million, which I know is a bit, and that's kind of our next point with Kevin Pritchard. Like, with the T.J. Warren deal, Joe, you have about $32 million. That's a max contract. $32 million is a max deal. Mm-hmm. So I think we've gone away from the high-end quality free agent to the quantity free agents. I think you're filling holes, and you're not just filling that top-end hole, which that's something that I don't think I don't know. I don't love it. I get it, but that's why I kind of go back to trading one of your bigs where you can, plug a hole here, plug another hole here with a trade. Then you still have the free agency money, and you can go out and make a run at a Russell, or because I think we've seen it. We see when you sign a Bogdanovich and a Joseph and a Young and a Collison, you know what your ceiling is. And I'm afraid for the Pacers' sake that they're going to have to go down that route again here in free agency.
Isn't D'Angelo Russell from Louisville?
Louisville, yeah. Played at Ohio State.
Is there? Probably not. That's probably a long shot. But, being that close to home, he went to school in the Midwest.
Right.
He seems like more of a coast guy. But
yeah. He's played on the coast, you know, drafted by L.A. and then over to Brooklyn. Joey, I go back to the Kevin Pritchard quote about point guards. John Stockton, pass first point guard, point guard that controls the game. Does Russell check all those boxes in his eyes for a guy that you'd be handing out $32 million for? Yeah. That would be my worry. Trust me, I'd go after him, but
not likely.
No, yeah. I'm not sold on it.
You mentioned earlier you think Thad's gone.
I think he's gone. Yeah, I just don't think I just don't see how you have the money to be able to give him what he would want.
Because he's probably trying to cash in.
This is probably it. It's probably one more time for him. And, where are minutes? Thad ain't playing the 3, if it's Domas and Myles, again, you've backed yourself into a corner. If you're going to play the 3 bigs, then you better not bring back Thad because then I just think it's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Thad can't shoot. Thaddeus Young did a lot of great in his few years here. But I think you probably move on.
You mentioned it a little bit, too, about what now, instead of going after the big-time free agent, they're going to have to fill some roles. Is that the new free agency approach?
Yeah, I think it is, Joey. I just think that that's where you're at right now of, who's your point guard? Who's your starting 2 guard to start the season? Who's your 3? Where are your backup spots at the 1, the 2, and the 4? Where's Aaron Holiday fit? There's about 4 or 5 legitimate questions you have within your rotation right now. And so I think I've moved away from you're in the max sweepstakes to you've got to go fill a lot of holes, or else it's going to be Alize Johnson, TJ Leaf, you're the backup 4. Edmund Sumner, you're going to play a ton. Yeah. It's almost like you're going down that route.
Throw into the fire a little bit.
Yeah, so I do think it's more of the mid-level guys versus just that high-end quality.
All right, you want to do a few Twitter questions here?
Yeah.
All right, we'll start with our guy, Benjamin 317. If the Pacers underperform this year, when Victor is ready to play, do they keep him out?
I think you still play him a little bit. I mean, maybe it's one of those things, Joey, if like, he could, we think he's ready by January 1. Maybe it's more like, all right, let's play him March 1, get him a month on the court. But like I said, I think there's a mental aspect to coming back from an injury of this nature. So as long as physically he's ready, I know a broken bone for Paul George is different than a tendon for Victor Oladipo, but I think it's important to get him some run on the court, even if you do have a terrible start to the season.
Tyler Christian wants to know, what's our realistic chance of landing an all-star caliber point guard in free agency?
I'd say minimal, honestly. I don't think Terry Rozier or Ricky Rubio are slotted into the all-star caliber. I would assume D'Angelo Russell and Kemba Walker would be into that category. And just, I don't know. Unless Kevin Pritchard's throwing up all sorts of smoke screens, Joey, I think it is Rozier or Rubio sort of thing versus Kemba Walker or D'Angelo Russell.
Super City Indy fan has a few different points here.
Sounds like they should be in Turner's block.
Yeah, probably are. With Sabonis' contract up soon, not likely we pay him, so is moving him almost a foregone conclusion. And then he says, rumors Pritchard has wanted A. Gordon. Any chance they revisit?
Yeah, Aaron Gordon from Orlando was a restricted free agent last year, like D'Angelo Russell this year. And Orlando was able to throw out an offer sheet that was too good for Aaron Gordon to pass up. I think it's something to where Kevin Pritchard has made it clear that having the rim protection is absolutely vital. So I think that Sabonis would be the more likely to move, but the issue is more so of like, I think they also think that Turner and Sabonis can play a little bit better together. I'm not sure if they think Goga and Turner can play together. Now, maybe if you traded Sabonis, that would then remove yourself from playing those two traditional bigs together. Would that go, I don't think you're going to get Aaron Gordon if you traded, but, would you then go the TJ Warren route at the 4? Do you go try and find a 4 on the open market? But I do think, given the contract situation, you would have less return on it. I don't think Sabonis is going to lend you anywhere near the same package you get back for Turner. But I think that would be the route the Pacers are more willing to go down.
All right, from Myles Burner at Part-Time Abe, do we bring either DC or Kojo back? Could Rubio, Holiday be our point guard rotation, and is that an improvement? And what money would be a fair value for Rubio?
Boy, that's a lot. I could see one of Joseph or Collison coming back. I mean, to be honest with you, the Pacers' point guard play last year wasn't at a very high level.
Yeah.
I don't know how much Rubio. With Rubio, Joey, to me, he just needs so many offensive skilled players around him. He needs a whole lot of talent around him. And if you look at this current makeup, I'm not sure if he would get that. What does your wing, what does your starting 2 guard look like with Rubio as a point guard and a guy that has shot the ball incredibly inconsistently? And you talk about shooting the 3 better, and Rubio does not do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I could call it an improvement at all. You really need Aaron Holiday to take a big jump, for a multitude of reasons, but also because he's on a relatively cheap contract. And we've talked about how this cap situation is going to really dry up pretty quickly. So I would say Joseph, better chance to come back than Collison. But I don't know if you can't go into next season with Joseph and Holiday. That's your point guard duo?
Yikes.
No.
Yeah.
Ugh.
From Cody Fowler, why draft all these young guys only to sign guys like Evans and Matthews to stunt their growth? Don't you think they'd be better off following the Colts model? Don't Philly tank, but start developing your own like Holiday and Alizé.
Well, I mean, Matthews and Evans are very different players than Alizé and Holiday. I mean, Evans is was supposed to be a creating on-the-ball 6-man that could carry the scoring burden for you when Victor was out. So I don't shun that idea. Obviously, it didn't work out, but But at the time, I understood it. This was a team that needed more creativity when you went to the bench. It needed more of a six-man. And the Wesley Matthews thing was strictly to try and put a Band-Aid on a wound that was bleeding rapidly fast with Victor Oladipo's injury situation. So I don't think you're stunting Alize Johnson's growth with Wesley Matthews or Tyreek Evans. The Aaron Holiday thing, I guess maybe a little bit, but I don't even think that you're going down that road either.
From David, do you trust Batadze to play third big right away, or do you sign a third big to back up potential starters Sabonis and Turner?
No, not at all. I think Goga is your third big. He's your third big. I think he's ready to play. I think you need to play him. I mean, I guess to go off Cody's question a little bit, yeah, if you signed a third big, you'd be stunning Goga's growth. All I've heard since he was drafted by Pacers people and other people around the league, this guy's ready. He is ready to play. So he should be your third big. Yes, those minutes could look different in what like Kyle O'Quinn was a lot different in what his role was for you last year, but Goga needs to be your third big and the first big off the bench.
From Tim, he says, we'll have to release cap holds on players to get below the cap in order to sign Warren. Do you think Bogdanovich will be the only player to retain from our free agents? If so, do you see the Pacers being able to sign another starter caliber free agent?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a way that you can re-sign Bogdanovich and find a starting point guard. Now, the big question again is, what do you do with that two-guard spot? There's no one on the roster right now that I think could be your starting two-guard if Victor's out.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, again, would you move Bogey down to the 2, play Warren into 3? But, I don't think you're re-signing Wesley Matthews. I don't know. I mean, if I'm gonna guess right now, I think Bogdanovich, he has the best chance to come back of any free agent, Joey, and I think the rest of the group, it's under 50-50 for any of those guys. Corey Joseph and Thad. Well, probably Corey Joseph is the closest in my mind to having a chance of coming back. I think Thad. The odds of Thad Young coming back totally took a huge hit with everything that happened last Thursday night.
Colton Evans wants to know realistic options at point guard and small forward if Bojan doesn't come back.
I mean, what about Terry Rozier, Joey?
Scary Terry.
Are you a fan of that?
Print the shirts. Bring those Barstool shirts over here.
I think that would make sense to me. I'm scrolling through the point guard list right now. It's bleak.
Never great to start with that, you know.
No, but I mean, I know people hate Elfrid Payton and he can't shoot it. He did average 10, 7, and 5 last year. I mean, that's a notable
the guy with the hair, right?
Right, and he'd bring pace. Again, he can't shoot it, but he would do something there. And in terms of the wing, I don't know if you're going to find a starting level wing. It seems like Chris Middleton and the Bucks are going to try and get something done. It's almost like you'd have to go to those second tier of shooters of all right, Wilson Chandler, Terrence Ross, Al Farouk Aminu. That kind of list is almost where you'd have to go down. But, if you re-sign Bogdanovich and you have TJ Warren, I mean, that's a possibility for guys that could be, starting on your wing. I mean, two totally different styles of player, but they could be your starting wing.
At James5538 wants to know, do you think Myles Turner's lower point production, fan perception, that's in parentheses, fan perception, is more related to his aggressiveness, role, or skill? Will he be featured more?
Probably a little bit of all three of those. I'd say aggressiveness and skill atop that list. Skill, he's just not the most fundamentally sound post player. Guy around the basket. It's a little awkward when he's trying to finish. It looks a little gangly to me and not as fluid as, a guy like Sabonis when he catches it in the post. But you know what? If you're going to be committed to playing these bigs and Oladipo's going to miss the time that he could miss, you have to almost pound these bigs. Sabonis and Turner are going to have to carry a huge scoring burden if this is the route that you're going to go down. But I think what's really key is, okay, if you're going to play with all these bigs, to me, that means you have to have shooting around them. For when you do throw the ball into the post to Domas, all of a sudden if he gets doubled, he can kick it out to shooters, not kick it out to Ricky Rubio.
Yeah.
So I think you got to look at this puzzle piece and make sure the backcourt complements currently what you have in the front court, which is a lot of beef.
Steven asks, what should the Pacers' primary goal be during this free agency period?
Honestly, trade Turner or Sabonis.
So you think that could happen in July?
So
June. Yeah.
I think it's possible, I think it's possible to do it, Joey, but I don't think the Pacers will.
Yeah.
So I guess that's, throw that possibility out the door a bit. But that's what I think they have to do. Free agency, to me, is not going to solve all. So if you're going to put that trade and say it's not going to happen, re-sign Bogey, sign Terry Rozier, find another rotational piece. I don't know if you have enough money to do all those things, but that would probably, to me, that would be, all things considered, that'd be I would give that a nice letter grade because I just don't see an all-star coming. And unless you make a move via trade, I don't think you can really, really improve this roster like you need to be thought of as a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference.
From Matt, is TJ Leaf set to be the backup 4 now, assuming Domas starts and we don't re-sign Thad?
Boy, that's scary. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, him, Alize Johnson, what about TJ Warren? You'd be going a little smaller there, but could Warren be that 4 as well? Is TJ Leaf going to play in the Summer League, Joey, for the 10th straight year, you think?
Probably. Yeah, got to get his body right.
Yeah.
His body into the NBA shape and NBA body.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sold on TJ Leaf, but I think him right now, him or Alize Johnson would get some decent run for you.
Okay.
Unless you think Warren is a 4, but if you think that, then you're going to have to go find some 2s and 3s that can come off the bench, not named Doug McDermott.
From Ben Orr, and we got a couple more here. Ben wants to know, will we ever have the intestinal fortitude to either truly tank or get into the luxury tax?
No.
Without a top 3 pick or busting the cap probably multiple years in a row, we'll be stuck between 3rd and 9th in the East forever. No reward for mediocrity in pro sports.
No, and I think, Ben, that there's a lot of truth to what Ben just said there. It's still an amazing stat to me, Joey, that in my lifetime, the Pacers have never drafted in the top 10.
Yep.
That to me is just
agreed.
It's incredible. I'm sure that is great for the franchise in the sense of you aren't going to bottom out too much from a money standpoint. But as Ben says, mediocrity is mediocrity. And they've probably been a little bit above that if you're going to throw out the exact definition for mediocrity. But if you're going to make that move, it's going to be something to where you have a better chance to get more return on moving Turner than Sabonis. But I go back to the Pritchard quote about how much he loves having that rim protector. And to be fair to Myles Turner, he protected it just about as well as anybody in the NBA last year. So, yeah, I think Domas.
All right, man. That's all we got from Twitter questions.
Cool. Appreciate all you guys sending in Twitter questions. And for those that think we're completely ignoring the Pacers, we're not. We have written content up on the site, and we'll continue to do that. Obviously, it'll be an extremely busy week or two coming up here around the NBA. And I do think the Pacers will be busy. It's just the level of that busyness, achieving what fans want them to achieve, is probably something that we need to keep in mind. Check out Kevin's Corner. It is the Pacers coverage tab on the website if you haven't, for all Pacers written content. And we'll be back later in the week for a Colts podcast. Appreciate you all listening to Kevin's Corner.